Hi everyone. Welcome to this panel. My name is Fernando Pacheco. I'll be moderating it, I think, or try to. Just the topic, what resonated with me when this came up is we pass on stuff all the time, right? 99% of stuff is that you look at as an investor you end up passing on, and it's easy to put yourself in a high horse as an investor because of exactly that kind of dynamic. But I think it's a nice reminder of how there's a lot of humility involved in that, right? And there's a lot of things that you pass on that end up being very successful on, and you learn from that, right? So that's what I wanted this conversation to be. I think we have an interesting story from Alexei here, which turns out all three of us have actually had a look in different varying levels of depth. And take that and then also see if we can expand it a little bit further as well. So to kick things off, we'll just kind of introductions of the different members of the panel, and also to talk a bit about your investment mandate and how that affects things as well as we go through. Maybe
shall I start?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So Irit Yaniv, I'm an investor and CEO in Almeda Ventures. Almeda Ventures is a VC, Israeli VC. A unique structure. We are public, so we are traded in Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. We raise our money in the public, and this is an evergreen fund, so we can raise more money when and if we want. We invest in medical device and digital health, late-stage medical device and digital health after they have $1 million of ARR from US organization. We invest in Israel and outside of Israel.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here on this panel today. Diana Saraceni, out of Italy, managing partner at Panakes. With Panakes, we have about 300 million under management. We invest across Europe, US, and Israel. We invest at any stage from seed to pre-IPO round. We're pretty stage agnostic, and that is part of the scope we have and the impact it had on the specific topic of this panel. About myself, I have 25 years of venture capital experience. I co-founded Panakes, and before that, about 20 years ago, co-founded another investment company, invested across multiple geographies in different sectors, not only in medtech, but also in biotech, and very different sectors long ago, and with very different outcomes, as we touch on the point here. Passed on a number of deals over 25 years, and some were good decisions, some were more questionable, and I think this is about it.
Sounds good. Alexei?
My name is Alexei Mlodinow. I was the co-founder and CEO of a company called SIA, which had a absorbable surgical mesh for plastic and reconstructive surgery. That was our sort of technology, and ran that from 2016 until 2022, at which time, after raising 21 million in equity and 2 million in NIH grants, we exited to Integra for a transaction value of 140 million in total. There's some structuring to that, which we can get into as appropriate for this panel, but just to echo Fernando's point about humility, I mean, there's obviously investors pass on deals that in retrospect maybe they look back on and regret, or say, damn, that would have been nice. But on the flip side as well, like you are humbled early and often, raising money from investors, and it's a very healthy exercise in listening to the reasons that they're rejecting you, and thinking about whether that is a them problem or a you problem, and if it's a you problem, how you can change based on that feedback and maybe improve the outcome for yourself and for them. So I can get into the SIA point by point fundraising, but
I'll just bring a little bit about Endeavour too, and then we'll go back. Yeah. What you said, it's you, not them. That's a really important dynamic, I think, that we'll touch on, right? So Endeavour Vision is a growth stage focused fund, medtech fund, headquartered in Switzerland, also with offices in the U.S., investing out of a $375 million fund where we do $10 to $20 million initial tickets in only later stage companies within devices. So that's, now you have, I think the spectrum here from an investment stage perspective, from geography perspective. Alexei, maybe catch us up a little bit more on SIA, and then I think on the different interactions you had with some of the members of this panel.
Yeah.
And we'll go through it and add more context.
Absolutely. So I'll try to keep this kind of lean and to the point. I think some relevant things are just stage by stage. When I met these three, or didn't meet them in some cases.
There's an email in our CRM, and I found
exactly. Just the fact they were using a CRM at that time when we didn't even know what a CRM was is, I think, pretty telling. But call it 2016 to 2018, we were raising a seed round, which was only about $1.3 million around the time that we emailed Endeavour Vision. So very early, had a licensed patent, but had no product beyond like a prototype, and maybe at some point in there, some early preclinical data. So we raised that seed round and developed the product, and actually moved it most of the way to 510K with just a couple million, which was pretty lean and fast, I would say, self-servingly. But then kind of I'd say the next era, right? If the first thing was a seed round, call it $1.5 million at a $10 million cap with product development and regulatory related milestones, you kind of then shift, okay, a couple of years later, we're raising a Series A where we have 510K and at that point CE mark, and we have very early clinical use, but no, it's not commercial at all. And so we're now in a Series A timeframe. When I think I met Diana and Irit right around that time, and we're raising maybe at a $16 million pre-money and trying to raise $4 to $6 million in a small Series A to accrue more clinical data, and then eventually get our first dollar of revenue, as well as start a PMA study. So that was kind of think about 2016 to 2018, then you have 2018 to 2020, and then you sort of have 2020 to 2022, where we were then raising a Series B. And I think that was the closest we got with Panakes at the time. Was we had a little bit of revenue. We commercialized in the midst of COVID. We had a little bit of revenue. We had at that point a year or more of dozens of patients of clinical data and surgeons willing to vouch for the product and stuff. And so then we were raising about, call it $10 million, though that number changed, but $10 million on a $32 million pre-money based on clinical data and first dollar of revenue, let's say. And that round was to expand commercially and to complete our PMA in the US for a specific indication. So that's sort of the three tranches, I'd say, of our life cycle and when we each met.
Actually, we met at the seed round as well.
Did we?
Yeah.
All right. Three times.
No, 2 times.
2 times. Seed round
Seed
and
and
then
A.
Series
If you
A.
had a CRM, you would have known that.
And she met you and A and
I know. Yeah, that's our disorganization, and we probably only sent one email. It's
so
terrible.
2 no's for me. Rejected.
And maybe just kicking off, I think with both of you, right? Can you share your perspective on those interactions? And also, there's a lot of color about where your individual fund is, to the point of it's not you, it's me kind of situation. And when we passed it, a lot of the times it's that, right? Color of where your fund was, what your strategy was, what kind of deals you were looking at, what exits you had by then, and so on and so forth. I think that's really helpful color that sometimes the entrepreneurs don't get.
You want to start?
Okay, sure. Well, as Alexei said, we met first time during Series A. The company had 510K with no data, if I'm correct, and that was so there was no kind of clinical evidence to support also what the use case would be and what kind of market size would be addressable. So Alexei and I discussed a number of times on what the market size could be in the end, how many procedure, and how could you shift maybe a portion of the market into using the product to increase the market size. And it was all unknown because there was no kind of clinical evidence to support. So that was perceived as big risk. even though the product was approved and ready to go on the market. So this was probably the main reason was to pass at that point was the unknown on something that was perceived as high risk. And don't take me wrong, we do a lot of high risk stuff, preclinical stage, even not approved product. But we also have to perceive the counterbalance, which is huge potential in terms of addressable market size. And this was the main unknown. So this was during Series A. During Series B, it was 2020. And
what happened then?
let me find out. And that was really, I mean, for Europeans that could not even go and visit the companies in the US, none of us was traveling, obviously for obvious reason, and the company was still kind of early stage, so you would not be able to travel there. You have no idea if you when and you could finally go and we have an in-person meeting even was all unclear, and so that was probably the main reason. We had another two main thing. One was a bit of the comparable for the exit. I think we discussed that too, right? There was one comparable transaction, Biosorb, in the space that was the most comparable exit we could think of. That wasn't too excited because it was coming late into revenues for a multiple that was not extraordinary. That made it overall difficult to think of a big step in the multiple, and that is about it. But I mean, frankly, there is some regret of not having identified that yes, this was not the $1 billion exit opportunity. That is confirmed, but it was also not the riskier of the stories we hear around. It was really the kind of balanced risk-reward. And so I was very focused on, this is high risk, so I need to find out the big market size to balance. And actually, it wasn't that so much of a high risk, because when your own expertise as a user yourself, it was a big asset that probably was underestimated.
And I think just from one of the things that I learned then in hindsight, of course, and more about the story, you had a rare opportunity to fund an IDE approved. You had the IDE in hand, right? So to fund an ongoing IDE trial on a product that was already in market.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of unusual.
Which is strange.
Yeah.
It's strange. Something we're not used to. Made perfect sense. It's a little bit different than what we're used to.
Yeah. I mean, and that has good, positive implications around the risk. It has also some, how do you market that in the meantime until you have a formal label, right? I mean, it's part of the sausage making that is this. But I think that's an interesting aspect.
That's part of it, yes.
So we met when you really raised the seed, and at that time I was in Axelmed, and we did venture creation. So this was not far away from what we are doing, and you asked it before if this is you or them, and I think that at that time it was us, because we were concerned about doing venture creation to someone in the US. Israeli company, Israeli venture arm, doing very close home and not doing venture creation over the ocean, outside of Israel. And this is our concern at that point. I think, and that's why we kept in touch, because I really like the proposition. I like you as a person and as a manager, and we kept it. No, really. I mean, I think that's important. I spoke this morning with some people, and they say, we meet so many venture funds that don't have money at the moment, and I said relationship is more important than money sometimes, because with relationship you keep going, and that's why we met when you did the round A. But at that time, again, on our side, we didn't have a fund to, we didn't have the cash to fund SIA. And if I regret, I would say yes, because it's kind of rare, and this is why we are saying yes so rarely, to find good manager, good product, and the real balance or good balance between risk and reward. And I think, Sia, at the end of the day, this is what you presented. Yep, I would say some regret.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I appreciate it. This panel was not meant to be me saying like nah, you know. So that's not at all the intention. But I think that issue that you guys articulated was a common one that we found at every stage. It was like, well, okay, like you're getting a 510K, but then you're talking about this huge market which requires a PMA. Then we get the 510K and we have revenue, and then people say, okay, you're raising growth equity and you expect a growth equity valuation, but you are also running this IDE study to get a PMA, so we're gonna throw out your revenue basically in this discussion, and we're gonna focus on what you should be priced at based on the PMA pathway. And it was always hard talking to people to define the business in terms of what kind of investment is this? Like, are you hedged with a commercial strategy and you're lower risk and maybe lower reward, or are you going for a big PMA class 3 indication and you're high risk, high reward?
And I think there's an element too of kind of a lot of things are unknown, right? And when something is unknown, you grasp at whatever, it kind of looks like this archetype or it kind of looks like this archetype. And there isn't an archetype for what you guys were doing, right?
We are guessing all the time. Yeah. And, you know, and at the end of the day, it's who is guessing better than the other. And that's why I do believe relationship is the key for everything at the end of the day.
Yep.
There are so many unknowns, so many uncertainty. So if we build up good relationship between the investors and the management team, between the investors and the company, we can overcome many of the uncertainty and the difficulties or the challenges that we are going to face. And I don't think there is even one company that will not face something towards the desired exit.
Yeah. Maybe just kind of opening up a little broader, right? We talked a little bit about regrets. Be curious to have kind of one example beyond CEO, right? Where for each of you, and I can share one as well, that where the reason you passed perhaps was a bit not necessarily unusual, but was it'd be good to have one where it's the reason where you passed because of your own dynamics and the reason why you passed because of the actual file itself.
We need to give examples, or
your call whether you want to mention them or not. Yeah, you can.
More on a
company.
On a broad and the company.
Yeah.
No, I mean it has to be considered that we build up portfolios, and in a portfolio, like for example at Panakes, we really sold to our LPs that we would have a portfolio that would be composite, and this is why we are stage agnostic, because it will be well balanced and a composite of a number of companies that will be lower risk, lower upside, and a number of companies that are the opposite, and somehow the return in the end will be balanced. And this is exactly what we do over time. We keep monitoring where we stand in terms of total risk in the portfolio and total return expectation. And so sometimes it's just a snow feet, and sometimes we pass because we are too exposed on something. Or sometimes it happens a lot. We're too exposed on seed capital with very, very high risk. Yes, we have all these companies that could prove to be, if they prove to that what they claim for, they're gonna be a huge value. But
But you're gonna have to support them for much longer.
We're gonna have to support for much longer. And it's far too risky portfolio. So for 1 year or more, we all look for that those companies that can balance that, and the other way around sometimes too. I have to say it's more often the case that because we're always excited when we take big risky thing at Panakes. We go very early, and we have the tendency to do that. So most of the time we try to rebalance with later stage, lesser risk, etc. These kind of companies. that's one item. The other item, unfortunately, is also a lot about partners' capacity. For example, at Panakes, each one of us follows only some subsectors. And if a partner is completely booked into board meetings with companies because he or she has 7, 8, or 9 companies to follow, the capacity on those specific sector will be, for new deals, will be much less. So we also pass for reasons that have very little to do with the portfolio construction. And one last, especially in Europe, is geography. And there are times where we are much more open to go beyond the European border and look a lot also at the U.S. companies or Israeli companies. But sometimes Israel is in the definition of Europe. And so, but this is because our own LPs do expect us to focus on some geographies, especially in Europe. The big investor, one of the biggest investors being the European Investment Bank, of course, the expectations are that at least a portion of the capital should then be invested in European companies. And that all of a sudden we have to pass on anything that's outside. And again, I mean, we pass on companies, we may have regrets. It has very little to do with how good the company is, that's to be said.
So Diana mentioned portfolio from the perspective of different stages. I would discuss portfolio from the perspective of fields, because this is another questions that we are negotiating within ourselves. On one hand, you would like to be on a specific field because you know the players, you know the market, you know to appreciate different devices. On the other hand, you want to be versatile enough and have different fields in your portfolio. And this is always the question. Okay, I have another cardiology company. I already have 3. Shall I do an investment on the 4th one, or shall I look for something else that will make my portfolio a little bit less risky in a way on the field? And this is a good example to something that I would say we can regret in our portfolio. A cardiology, we invested in one structural art company. We place quite a lot of cash into this company, and when another company came in, we said, okay, we have a solution, we are not going to invest in another solution. And unfortunately, or fortunately for the company that we say no, they got an exit and we didn't. So yeah, from time to time you take a decision that you may regret, but I think as an investor, you shouldn't regret on anything. I mean, you should work hard on the portfolio that you have and make the best from what you have decided.
Yeah. No, I think I could talk about a field in dental as an example. Very similar situation, right? You make one investment and you said, okay, I'm not going to add another company in this field because of portfolio concentration. But at the end of the day, you can diligence that second deal way better because of your investment in the first one, right? And there's an aspect of that. I mean, on our side, we're focusing on growth stage investment, right? So generally, if you think of a portfolio of 10 companies, we're not going to have many 8, 9Xs in that, right? Given when we invest in terms of the risk appetite we have. The objective is 3 to 5X in 3 to 5 years, per individual deal, but then as a whole, the portfolio will do, let's say, a 2.5, 3. But that means you can't have zeros, right? So you can't have too many zeros that then take the average down tremendously, right? And that's why there's different, you have completely 3 different archetypes here of how to look at things. And I mean, 80% of the things we end up passing on is on stage, right? But then at the same time, when we say pass, we mean see you later more often than not, right? I mean, on average, we meet a company, we did the statistics the other day, 3 to 4 years before we make an investment, right? To your point on relationships.
That's absolutely
It's things like this, right? It's that same conversation, what's the update, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's hard to call it, okay, this is the right time. Sometimes someone else calls it for you, and it's a competitive situation, and you have to move, right?
But I think this is something, and I don't know who is sitting in the audience, but if there are CEOs, you should know that we are looking on what you are saying in the past. And this is something that creates a lot of credibility for us. So if you come and meet us, let's say today, and we say, as you said, too early, let's meet in 2 years, we keep the presentation, we keep our notes, and when you come in 2 years, we will compare what you told us. And the best thing, of course, is to fulfill the milestone. And if you did it, at least explain it or try to explain it in such a way that this will become an appealing proposition at this stage or at current. And this is very important because sometimes people forget that they said something 2 years ago, and now, we promise you a PMA or we promise you FDA approval, but we didn't meet it.
Can I add on to that? It's also the reason why we pass, that we keep track on.
Right.
And that is at least what we do is the first question that we ask when we're back. It's even more than delays. I mean, delays. I'm sympathetic a bit of delays after so many years are understandable. But if there was a reason to pass, how has this been addressed is going to be the key question, because we don't redo the work we had done, right? So if we had passed, again, sometimes it's the market size, sometimes it's the reimbursement, or and this is tracked.
You're absolutely right, and this is another tip that we should give is ask why we are passing.
Yeah.
Because you will learn much more from those that passed than any other. So if we pass because of reimbursement, go and find out how you can change the reimbursement landscape in such a way that next time you approach us, you have a good answer for that. So always ask why.
I always offer it. Always. No, not that I offer, that I ask if you want to know. I tell it. So
but I think
like, at the end of the meeting, of the so-called first meeting, there's a key decision. That's Panakes. We take, you might remember that. It's either you get the due diligence question, the 3 key points we wanted due diligence on to start, or you get the reason why we passed. So it's the end of first meeting. That's why. And I mean, not because we think this is the reason, etc., but because that's the way we work, and we keep track, and we take it from there next time.
Yeah, and I think a comment on that too is as an entrepreneur, I think it's part of the game. It's your right to ask for that type of feedback, and you should. And I think, honestly, as an investor, when someone asks us for the feedback and for the concrete feedback, my respect for the entrepreneur grows, right? And I think it's more interesting because but it's about how you ask. If you're asking because you're trying to convince, you want, again, like when I give feedback or when one of us gives feedback, it's feedback that either it's that we've developed our own, but more often than not, it's feedback from our investment committees. Right. So it's very hard for us to go back and be convinced with just, oh, by the way, there's also this fact. Like, so do it in a way where you're sincerely wanting to learn, and then you can come back a year or 2 years later in the next financing. And if you've done your homework, right, this is what you said last time, this is how it's changed. Versus in that last meeting trying to, but we're actually we have revenue in this country, but like, it's not going to help your case, frankly, in those situations.
Try to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always super valuable when people provided it up front without solicitation. But yeah, we would ask for it, and our sad, technically unsavvy lack of a CRM notwithstanding, we did have, the one thing we had was like a big Excel spreadsheet with investors, with some of the, last time we contacted them, but more importantly, round by round, you could look back and say, oh, Series A, here's the 150 conversations we had, and we did have a reason to pass for all of them. Some of you never know. A lot of the times I'll say people are, for I'm sure positive reasons, just related to not wanting to hurt your feelings or whatever. They will fall back on on something about this being maybe outside their mandate or being the wrong timing or whatever. But I would say, the majority of the time, if you push a little bit for like okay, that's cool, but like if this was a cure for cancer, you would have invested, right? And you'll get some reason for like, yeah, this is why we would deprioritize it in our decision making. Yeah.
And I think it goes on to that forms a rapport and forms a relationship, right? It forms an honest conversation. And likewise, just the way I think entrepreneurs can ask for feedback, they can also ask for help, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Look, this might not be a fit for you. What we do for a living is networking, right? Because most of us are syndicating deals at any point in time, right? So we all have other investors in our network. And I think you should feel free to ask, okay, for what I'm doing, who is the kind of people I should talk to? Can you put me in touch with them? Or can I share a deck with you and a teaser that you can send with them and say if they want to talk? That helps continue that relationship.
Right.
Yeah, and also maybe sometimes it's just that there was a mismatch in understanding or communication, so that helps for next time or next investors that to be clear on something specific, like if you think we are completely wrong on the outcome of our assessment, there are two reasons. One, we're wrong, and that happens a lot. But the second one, it's our fault for lack of knowledge or lack of expertise. Or the second one is it's not been communicated well enough, and that can be fixed. So that's a very important lesson to bring home after
And
this
on
discussion.
the communication side, I think that's another point, is try to involve more than one person in the discussion, because sometimes there is no fit between the investor and the CEO or the biz dev that came and asked for investment. So being open and involve more of your team in the discussion may create this match or the right communication, because sometimes there is a problem, and we are human. Sometimes something doesn't work between two people. So try to bring more than one person to the discussion. Maybe not to the first one, but try to involve more of your management team. Someone will build up this relationship and the open communication in such a way that if this is going to be no for now, at least you build up relationship for the yes next time.
I think one other aspect I wanted to touch on is Alexei, you were still able to finance the company, right? Through three successful financings, right? And then a successful exit too, right? There's a lot of tenacity involved and resilience as well. And you were told no hundreds, maybe more?
For sure, hundreds, yeah.
Right? of times. And could you maybe in the last 5-6 minutes just give us some examples of kind of how to navigate and dribble some of those situations and what led you to the outcome that where you did manage to find the support and the backing?
Yeah, I think it's hard to tie that all together.
Yeah,
on the
sorry. You see, VCs ask really complex, long questions that actually have 3 questions.
Exactly.
We're notorious for that.
So yeah, you for sure will get hundreds of no's. I think almost no matter what you're doing, unless you're able to self-fund. I know a couple people that have the privilege of self-funding their thing until they have enough credibility that they can just get fewer no's. But for most people, yeah, you get a lot of no's, and some of the no's are because you send a one-line stupid email as like a student to someone who's a professional investor in a very different sector, and you don't even follow up after that because you don't remember that you sent it. That's one category of an implicit no, which is well-deserved. You've heard the other 2 categories. There's a timing-related no's, which I think are, depending on when you're talking about fundraising, can be the most frequent, which is encouraging because then it's not you, it's the market or it's the fund. And then there's more strategic no's, and those are the those are the hardest and also the most, I guess, rewarding, right? Because if you listen to them and you understand the why and you think about, is this a mismatch of their strategy and our strategy, or is this a thing that we should actually just fix? You can learn a lot. So how it was like a 3-part question.
Yeah,
I think there's hundreds of no's. How do you do it?
How do you navigate that?
Do it.
To finding the funding sources that you found.
Yeah. So then you, it's a numbers game, right? I mean, it's like, I think it's a numbers game that is a little bit informed by, what's the word I'm looking for? Lead qualification. So at first, especially in my ignorant shoes at the time, you're just, it's like there's people who are investors and people who are not investors. And so you're just like, like firing emails out there, like getting no's at an extremely high rate, but also putting in work at an extremely high level that is not very targeted. And then you learn, you understand, you listen to these people and what they're looking for, and you start to at least, you still have, hundreds of no's to get, but at least those hundreds of no's are from people who are at least like relevant. Like you're not just asking the wrong people. And so you start to work more efficiently in that way by qualifying your leads and understanding. And then, as we talked about at length, right, with regard to relationship building and stuff, you then not only work more efficiently, but you carry those conversations a year or two later into even more efficiency, because you're able to not only qualify your leads, but also know what the problems were in the past, and hopefully in 2 years you fix some of those problems. And then your efficiency rate just gets higher and higher. Ours was never objectively high. It was just a numbers game. But if you're drawing numbers from a pool of more and more reasonable investors for your stage, then at least it becomes a little bit painfully high rejection rate instead of a overwhelmingly high rejection rate, right? That's where you're, to me, I mean, I'm not the best at fundraising, but that is your band. It's either very, very painful, or it's like, like a Finnish sauna that I was in a few weeks ago. It's like quite painful and uncomfortable, but you know that you'll live as many other people did before you. So.
And you get better the longer you're in.
Yeah, and the more
you go back out, jump in the snow and come back in, right? It's
exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's important to try and learn, not just the pitch.
Yeah.
Right.
And you build up long-term relationship. I mean, it's we can think we compare notes on deals, because you're also acting as a business angel now, and a number of times afterwards. And every time I have I'm looking at I run a due diligence and looking something in your sector, I reach out to you. A portfolio company of ours is working with you because of that, because we knew each other. So I think it's a frustrating process, but also rewarding somehow. You build up relationship and network, which is useful.
Yeah, if you persevere in that way, you come out with much more rewarding things than a Series A investment, right? You come out with long-term relationships and a lot of knowledge that you can carry to the next thing, and then that will make the next thing easier and more fun. So,
because we're all kind of winging it in a way and learning as we go along, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the important thing is share these no's with your peers. That's self, right? Because it's not only you, it's everyone is getting no most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen some of these kind of CEO support network, sounds like an Alcoholics Anonymous thing, but do you know what I mean? Like, do you see more and more of these where you can share some of this knowledge? Or
Yeah. And they can chat on us.
Exactly. Exactly. Good. I think we're more or less up on time, but thank you very much to the three of you. And thank you, Alexei, and congratulations. And now on to the next big thing, I guess, or the next several big things.
After a 1 year period of unemployment, or sabbatical, as I've been encouraged to call it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.